Well, this is it. We've had it, the big one that we've been waiting for the last, 5 or 6 weeks now. Gorton and Denton by-election has happened, has been and gone. We've got the results. We're going to get into that very soon. But first, before we jump to that, I'm going to tease you slightly because we are going to look first at the Shirley Ward in Southampton City Council. Of course, you can feel free to skip ahead to the Gorton and Denton bit if you want to, but for the real ones, I know you like to see the local council by-elections just as much as the big parliamentary ones. So we'll get into this first, and if you're new to the channel, please do leave a like. Of course, well, all of you can leave a like, but if you're new, please do subscribe to the channel and join this wonderful growing community of people very, very interested in British politics. And actually, this Southampton City Council result is actually pretty interesting in its own right, because the Liberal Democrats were defending this. It was last elected in 2024, and the Lib Dems were down almost 12 points, which is a less than ideal result, down to 27% of the vote, which is, low. And look, they've won. They've held on to the seat on 27% of the vote, and it's, again, another seat we've seen being won on less than 30% of the vote. That's becoming quite common now. Look, a bad result for the Liberal Democrats here. If you live in Southampton, I would be very, very interested to hear your perspective on this, because the other more interesting thing is that Labour increased their vote share by almost 3 points. I can't remember the last time I said Labour increased their vote share. Look, only 3 points. It's hardly anything. But they came very, very close to winning the seat from the Liberal Democrats within half a percentage point. Almost, not quite, 0.6. So, look, very strange sort of result in Southampton there, which is why I'm interested to hear your take, if you're from Southampton, to let us know what's gone on there with the Liberal Democrats losing some vote share, Labour gaining some vote share. Reform got 19% of the vote, by far the biggest gainers of anybody in the poll, but still a long way short of finishing in the top spot, third place for them. Greens in fourth, they increased by a fairly decent 7.5 points to 15% of the vote themselves, and the Conservatives were down 16 points. So look, another very bad night for the Conservatives. We're going to speak a little bit about the Conservatives in Gorton and Denton, although they're more of a side dish to the main story. But yeah, again, down 16 points, losing half of their vote actually from before. So another bad result for the Conservatives. Again, no sign of this Conservative revival happening at all. So the majority was very slender. 21 votes won it for the Liberal Democrats, a 0.6 percentage point margin of victory. So very, very close with Labour there. I mean, imagine the shot in the arm for Labour if they could have come away from tonight claiming this win. I mean, look, nobody would have noticed it. It would have been, this is nothing compared to the parliamentary by-election, but still, at least for the people who were paying attention or do pay attention, like you good people watching this channel, it would have been a bit of a shot in the arm for Labour to say they actually have won a seat, but not quite. Turnout here was 35% as well, which is very good. Right, but now that's enough of that. We will now get over to Gorton and Denton. So here it is. This is the result. I'm sure you've seen it already anyway. And look, I've got a few things to say about this. The usual analysis bits we'll get into. But first, I just want to touch on the story that came out shortly after the polls closed last night. This group, Democracy Volunteers, their stated aim, mission, plan, whatever you want to call it, is to improve, and I'm quoting from their site here, improve the quality of democratic elections by advising those who legislate for, administer and oversee them, and we do this to enhance them for the benefit of voters through non-partisan and empirical observation of the electoral process. So essentially, they observe elections, they make sure everything works as it should, people can access polling booths and things that happen inside the polling stations is as it should be. As far as I can tell, they don't seem to have any axe to grind. They don't seem to have skin in the game. They do just seem like a non-partisan, non-biased organisation that just wants to make sure elections happen properly. Around about half an hour after the polls closed last night, 10:30, around about that time, they released a statement that they said they wouldn't normally do so early afterwards, but they said that the significance of what they had seen during this by-election in Gorton and Denton warranted coming up with this statement. And they said, today we have seen concerningly high levels of family voting in Gorton and Denton. Based on our assessment of today's observations, we have seen the highest levels of family voting at any election in our 10-year history of observing elections in the UK. So what is family voting? Well, very quickly, it's not just going down to the polling station with your family, your mum and dad, or your children, or whatever. That's allowed, but it is entering into the booth, the voting booth, where you go and mark your ballot paper. That is a sacrosanct place in our constitutional system. It is for one voter to go in, mark their paper, put it in the box, and nobody has any right to ask them who they voted for, or direct them in any way as to who to vote for. Family voting is where two people essentially go into the booth together, so not just to the polling station, but into the actual booth where you mark a ballot paper, and that is illegal. It's not allowed because it breaches that sacrosanct, personal voter secrecy that each voter is entitled to. And of course, because the reason is that this opens up the possibility for coercion, that you can be coerced by somebody who's taken you into the voting booth and they say you have to vote for this person. And that is the bit we really want to talk about here. Now, this group have said that and I'm creating our highlights as I go along, the Observer team saw family voting in 15 of the 22 polling stations observed, some 32 cases in total, 9 cases in one polling station alone. The team observed a sample of 545 voters casting their vote, meaning 12% of those voters observed either caused or were affected by family voting. Now, look, firstly, I just want to say that this, based off those numbers, it hasn't had an effect on the result, I don't think. Look, the Greens won this election by a decent margin. I don't think this is affected. But there's a deeper point to make here that I think is very, very important, and we all should be making it, those of us who care. We have, in this country, free and fair elections. Now, the fair bit just means everybody plays by the same rules. We have the Electoral Commission to make sure that happens, that people don't cheat, essentially. And everybody is allowed, each party, each candidate is allowed the same ability, the same platform to put their case across, to campaign. Nobody is hindered. It's fair. Free is the other very important part of this. And like I say, we take this for granted, I think, in this day and age. But actually, men died for this. In the last century and a bit, British men went and died for this principle, for this cornerstone of how our country operates. And so we mustn't take it for granted, because it's not something that exists by itself. It's not it's a right that must be protected, is what I'm saying. And it had to be fought for, and it has been fought for. And we mustn't let it slip away. And I'm going to get probably a bit more opinionated and political than I normally like to on this channel, but I think this is vitally important. Because, look, demographics have played a big part in this election. We'll talk about that shortly. We live in a multicultural society as it stands, for good or ill, whatever your opinions are on that. In some cultures, it's normal, accepted practice for the man or the male, the patriarch of the family unit, to be, the patriarch. What he says goes. Well, that's not how we operate in this country, and it's certainly not how we operate when it comes to elections. Each person, each individual who is a registered voter, who's eligible to vote, has the right in a free and fair election to cast their vote as they see fit, free from coercion from anyone, whether that be the state themselves or a family member, from anyone. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is, this is very much my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you move to this country, or have moved to this country, or your parents moved to this country from a place where the culture is slightly different, all we ask is that you live by our rules. This is how we do things here. Free and fair. And you have no right to coerce or collude to interfere with anybody else's voting. And if the idea of your wife or your sister or your daughter being allowed to go into a voting booth privately without you and putting an X in a box that you can't see, if that is something you can't live with, then I'm sorry, but this country isn't for you. And I'm getting opinionated because this is very important. Because, like I've said, this is something that it can be lost. This right can be lost, and we must protect it. We must fight for it. And if that means standing up and saying, I'm sorry, but if your culture, if your way of life means you can't operate within our rules, within our laws, and within our customs, then I'm sorry, this isn't the place for you. And I think that you should go and find somewhere else to live. That, I think, we should say with our chest, unashamedly, because frankly, this country is a brilliant country. Our culture is fantastic, the one that we have. It's been built up over centuries, and it's high time the people who are the inheritors of that culture and of that society fight for it and stand up for it. So I am getting opinionated there because I think this is very, very important. But I wanted to cover that before we get into anything, because I think that's quite a big story out of last night. But now we'll go on to the actual result. So like I say, the Green Party won, and they won it fair and square. They won it by a big margin. They got 40.7% of the vote, call it 41% of the vote, and their vote share increased by 28 points. So look, a huge result for the Greens. I in my head, I think I thought the Greens probably were the favourites. I thought they had been for a little while, but you can never tell. I thought it would be closer than this. I didn't think any party would get more than 35% of the vote. And so look, well done to the Greens. But the Greens winning, congratulations to them. I don't think that's the main story of the night, okay? The main story is that the Labour Party have taken an absolute pasting in a safe seat, a very safe seat. You know, they got over 50% of the vote. I think it's 50.1 in all fairness, but they got 50% of the vote in 2024. I think the majority was in the region of 18,000, was it? In fact, I'm going to look this up. Hang on a second, pause. The majority was around about 12, 13,000. So a huge majority, massive. And this is the second big majority safe seat that Labour have lost in 2 years. Obviously, they lost Runcorn and Helsby last year to Reform. So that's the main story. Labour down 25 points. I said they were going to be down 25 points, by the way. I'll take that one. Down 25 points, losing half their vote share, or getting their vote share cut in half from 2024. But that's the main story. This government, this Labour government is finished. Starmer as Prime Minister is finished. I think everybody knew this. This, I think, is another nail in the coffin. I think he'll go on now. I thought at one point with the Mandelson stuff he was about to go imminently, but he managed to, for some reason, the cabinet has rallied around him. No one's resigned, and I think he will limp on now until May. More results like this are going to be in store for them. Remember that whole swathe across Greater Manchester. No council elections being cancelled now either. So the whole lot of them are going to be going ahead. Greater Manchester, Yorkshire, all these areas very much dominated by Labour at the moment. The North East, they're going to get a pasting just like this. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be a bloodletting, and he won't survive that. I think everybody knows that. I feel like he must know that. I don't know if he does or not, but he won't survive that. I don't think. Although then again, he survived the Mandelson thing, but I don't know if he's only survived that because everybody knows he's going anyway. I don't know, but that's the main story from the night anyway. The second story of the night, I think, is the Green Party, and they've won. Obviously, they've won. They've won very comprehensively. And how did they win? Well, as I was discussing with a friend, it's, I think, two things. Firstly, they have explicitly appealed to the sectarian vote. They have done campaign videos in foreign languages, in Urdu, and I think Bengali was the other one. They have specifically targeted an Islamic or, frankly, an Islamist vote, and campaigned very heavily around the Gaza issue. They have very explicitly, very purposefully campaigned for the sectarian vote, which I think is divisive, personally. They all say that, you know, Reform and others are divisive. I think that's divisive, to be honest with you. The other thing that my learned friend mentioned is that they didn't at any point, as far as I'm aware, campaign on the environment. Now, up to this point, up until Zach Polanski has become leader of that party, they've been very much everything through the climate lens. The environment, the climate, global warming, the climate catastrophe, the climate crisis, etc., etc. And everything was through that lens. If you go and look at their 2024 manifesto for the general election, every policy area was framed through the lens of the climate. It was the economy in a climate crisis, education in climate, healthcare in a climate, everything that you could possibly think of. They managed to bend through the lens of climate and environmentalism. Not anymore. The Greens are moving away from their niche, from their niche environmental cause, their climate cause, and they are embracing just outright leftism, which is a challenge to Labour, because they are, like I say, moving away from just a very sort of a much more narrow road where you are necessarily limiting your appeal to voters. And I think this is where the Liberal Democrats went wrong after 2016. They became the party of anti-Brexit. The whole 2019 campaign for the Liberal Democrats was anti-Brexit. Nobody knows, I think still now, what do the Liberal Democrats actually stand for, other than they want to be back in the EU. And so they've essentially made themselves a single issue party. And the Greens are going the opposite direction. They're saying, no, we're going to broaden ourselves out. We're not single issue anymore. We are the champions of the left. If you want real leftist politics, come and vote for the Green Party. And so, look, that's a big challenge to Labour, because they've got Reform already on the right, which is decimating them in predominantly white working class areas. And now they've got the Greens stealing that sectarian ethnic minority vote, which we've seen here in Gorton and Denton, but also going after their left-wing core of supporters as well. So I think that's the other really big story that we learn from Gorton and Denton. Those are the main courses. Some side dishes. The Conservative Party have lost their deposit in an election for the first time, I think since the 1970s. Down 6% to less than 2% of the vote. Look, the Conservatives were never going to win here. They got 6% last time. But I think it's just a sign. It's a sign the Conservatives are becoming less relevant. I'm not entirely sure, but I think they weren't even that far ahead of the Monster Raving Loony Party, which is where actually our other side dish comes in here, which is Advance. Advance UK stood in this election. Now, they're not on this chart that you see here. They did get less than the Monster Raving Loony Party. So I think any challenge to reform from the right from Advance has just been killed dead in the water. I don't think Advance can come back from that. Losing or receiving less votes than the Monster Raving Loony Party is peak irrelevance. That is finished. It's done. Obviously, look, we've had Restore, haven't we, in the last few weeks, have become a part. Well, they haven't actually become a party yet. They're still waiting to be registered, but they are becoming a political party. I know there's a lot of excitement online about that. Let me know what you think in the comments. I have to say, I don't think much will come of this. They may well be more successful than Advance. I think they've already got much more momentum behind them than Advance. But I think in the real world of actual elections, I don't think they'll make much of a mark. I'm kind of going off piste here, but just because we're talking about Advance, and I know many of you in the comments will be interested in this as well. So do get in the comments, start a debate about it. Let me know what you think if you disagree with me. But I don't see Restore making much of an impact as it stands. Things might change, and look, they're going to have. They will poach a few of, and they already have poach a few of Reform's current existing membership and some of their councillors who feel that Reform aren't robust enough or whatever. But once that initial excitement or whatever fades away, I don't think there's much. I don't think there's much market share for them available, to be honest with you. But we'll wait and see. I could be wrong. I could well be wrong. And that's it, guys. Our turnout was 47.5%, by the way. Really, really high turnout for a by-election. I believe this is also higher than the turnout in this constituency for the general election. So, yeah, interesting. Quite decent voter engagement, although still less than 50% turnout, sadly. And that's it. That will do it for this video. It's a bit longer because I went on my bit of a rant about free and fair elections, but I think it's very important. leave a like on the video for free and fair elections and for fighting for them, because it's a cornerstone of our constitution, of our democracy, of our society, and I think it's very, very important that we fight for them. We fight desperately hard for them. Just before I go, one thing I want to mention, because it comes up each week in the comments. A number of you mention town and village councils and parish councils elections and ask why I didn't cover them. I have to kind of set the limit somewhere, and I'm setting the limit at these local elections, which are borough councils, district councils. The only reason, because frankly, there would be, I think, too much information to get through each week. And also, frankly, the towns and parish councils are just not very well covered. The aggregator accounts that I use, like election maps predominantly, I use them for the results, and that's how I bring them to you. I don't have anything for that, and it would take me too much time to do that. So by all means, do put them in the comments and talk about them. Absolutely fine, but that's the reason I don't cover them on the channel, because it's I just got to draw the line somewhere. And that's going to do it, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.